Hey guys, it's Will from EDM Tips, and today we are going to have a look at gain staging. Now, I know gain staging doesn't sound very sexy, and it's not, but trust me, if you spend a few minutes learning this vital skill, it's going to pay dividends in the quality of your productions and your mixes. So what is gain staging? Well, if you think about the audio signal of a track, then it flows from element to element, so from plugin to plugin, and all gain staging is making sure that it is at the optimum level or the optimum volume throughout every step of this chain, and that will give us clearer mixes. It will give us a louder master at the end of the process, so we can avoid mixes like this and instead have a lot more clarity and headroom, and we'll get it sounding like this. Now, this is actually an excerpt lesson from my Ultimate EDM mixing course, which you can find out more about below this video by clicking the link. So let me know what you think in the comments. Don't forget to download your free gift below this video and subscribe to my channel. Without further ado, let's hop into the door and get it done. The gain staging is basically the process of managing audio levels in a signal flow to prevent the introduction of distortion and clipping. We'd only want to add distortion if it was a creative choice and we were using a plugin like a distortion plugin, for instance. Now, you may remember I've mentioned headroom once or twice before. Now, by the end of our mix, we want to have a lot of headroom still on the master channel. And this is so we don't crush the dynamics, and the mastering engineer, be that us or someone else, has the headroom required to further process the signal and make the mix as loud as possible. But if we add distortion and clipping now by mistake, you'll never be able to get rid of that, and it's going to impact the master and therefore the final sound of the track. Now, we have a couple of ways that we can control the gain throughout the signal flow to make sure it never clips. One is using the input and output controls on plugins, but not all plugins have these controls. And if they don't, then we can just insert gain, trim or level plugins to just bring the level down or up as required. Now, gain, level and trim plugins, they're all the same thing, they're just slightly different names, and each DAW will have a slightly different version, but all DAWs will have the equivalent of a gain plugin. So there are three main reasons that gain staging is really important. One, as I've mentioned, we want plenty of headroom on our master channel. If we can get our mix averaging about minus 18 dBFS, that's great. It doesn't have to be completely accurate, but minus 18 dBFS is a lot of headroom, so we can't go wrong with that really. The second reason for gain staging is so we can do fair comparisons when we add plugins to our mix. So for instance, if you add a compressor, it's bringing down the volume of your signal. So we then have to bring it back up so it's comparable to the signal before it was compressed. And we do this because our ears trick ourselves into thinking that something that sounds louder is actually better. So if you are using an equalizer, for instance, and you boost the high frequencies, the overall signal is going to be louder. So we have to account by that by trimming the gain down a little bit after the equalizer to make sure that when we're bypassing the effect, we can actually hear just the effect that's being applied and not a bump or a reduction in volume, which can confuse our hearing. And the third reason is that some plugins, especially analog modeled ones that are supposed to behave like real equipment rather than software, have a sweet spot for their operations. So I'll show you an example of this with the Echo Boy plugin. Okay, so first I will demonstrate the clipping issue that we avoid by gain staging. So when you load all of your stems into your DAW, as I've said before, the levels will usually be at 0 on the channel faders. So let's have a listen to our vocals. So here we can see the vocals are peaking about minus 4.5 decibels. And the average or RMS level is minus 18. And that's all fine and well, but now if we put all the other tracks on at these very high levels, you can see we've got clipping here. And if we take that to its logical extreme, you can hear the digital distortion. And that is exactly what we're trying to avoid. So what do we do to avoid this? Well, when we load a track in, Before any of these plugins, so I'll just turn them off for the time being, we can put a gain or a trim plugin as the first plugin in our chain or our signal flow. So we'll put the channel fader back to 0, and we want this to be averaging about minus 18 dBFS or minus 18 decibels.
To be free, got to be free, got to come together as one family.
So we just take down the trim.
Got to be free.
So if we start our mix with every track bumping around minus 18 dB, then we're going to have lots of headroom here on this master bus. And if you're mixing and your song's sounding quiet because it's bumping up around the minus 18 to minus 12 mark, something like that, then just turn your headphones up or turn your monitoring up. Leave this master channel alone at 0 dB though, and you'll always know that that is an accurate yardstick of the levels that you're hitting. Okay, so the second reason is plugin comparison or A/B testing. So let's get our synth here, our synth chords. We'll put our gain plugin here and we'll get it bumping up around minus 18. And you don't have to be super accurate. I mean, the thing that really matters is that you've got plenty of headroom and that you're not clipping anywhere along the signal path. So say I wanted to add a saturator. Listen what happens when I increase the drive of the effect. Not only can you hear the saturation, it's also made it a lot louder. So what gain staging is when we compensate for that increase in volume. So if you watch your metering and put the plugin on and make it so the RMS level is bumping around minus 18, basically where it was before you've turned the plugin on. So now when you A/B test and bypass it, you're only hearing the desired effect of the plugin that you've added rather than the increase or decrease in volume. And the third reason for gain staging is, as I said, some plugins operate best at a particular level, which is about minus 18 dBFS, because that is the equivalent of 0 on a VU meter, which you don't need to worry too much about. But if you go by minus 18 dBFS or minus 18 decibels on your DAW's metering, you should be good. So as I said, I will show you an example with the Soundtoys Echo Boy to show you what I mean. So this is set up as it should be. So it's bumping around minus 18 dB there. We'll activate the plugin. Still bumping around minus 18, so that's great. But what happens if the volume hasn't been adjusted? Let's pump it up and see what happens. So I'll compensate for this boost in volume with a gain plugin after the effect. So it's still bumping around minus 18, so it's a fair test. But you can see all these red clipping warnings here, and you can hear that the signal is actually distorted now, even though the level is back down the same. But listen to that now compared to how we had it before. So it's a different sound and it's quite subtle, but if you consider you might have 2 or 3 or 4 plugins in a row, these unwanted distortions and unwanted effects can just build up and absolutely ruin your mix. Especially when you consider that you might have 16 or 20 of these tracks, each with digital distortion, all building up into a big, muddy, horrible mess. So always be aware of the gain staging, and you'll get a better, clearer, crisper, less muddy mix when it's all summed together into this master bus at the end of the mix. Now, as I said, you don't need to be too technical about it. As a rule of thumb, just keep it conservative. Keep your mix so it's bumping around here, around the minus 18 to minus 12 mark. And be aware of the effect that the volume is having through each plugin in your audio chain. And it's as simple as that. So there you have it, guys. That is gain staging. Again, it's not very sexy, but it's a vital skill to learn. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell. Download my free gifts. And until next time, cheers and happy producing.